Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Do you have construction needs? Maybe you need to get a roof done. Check out K&H Construction in Waxahachie. They'll take good care of you and let them know DV LeBron sent you. Today, my very special guest is Texas Rep. Mr. Brian Harrison for this area for Ellis County, HD10. How you doing, sir?
I am wonderful. I'm a little sleep deprived. It's been a long week down here, but man, it's great to do one of these with somebody that I consider a friend and somebody who lives back home in Ellis County. So it's great to be with you, my friend.
I do appreciate you coming on. I know you've been busy. I have seen you on I think the only thing I haven't seen you is on that Russian TV or something like that. That's about the only one I haven't seen. You've been busy. You've been real busy.
It's crazy.
You went on NPR.
NPR, yeah. I mean, pretty much all over the world. I mean, the BBC. I mean, we're in the middle of what has become one of the biggest stories and most consequential, political issues on the planet right now down here in Texas. So it's been a wild ride.
And I can't wait to dive into it. I just wanted to ask you for your constituents. Last legislative session, I didn't even get a chance to talk to you, but they did some things like the school choice bill. No matter what it came out like, and there was a whole bunch of little things done, but as you there was nothing really big done for property tax and abolition of property taxes. So I mean, and then I saw your videos where you called out. I mean, you were standing there and point of contention and doing the parliamentaries to get the speaker to and you called out a bunch of stuff. So talk to me. What happened there? What happened in that session?
Well, I'm happy to chat about this. I mean, look, the voters in Ellis County, Texas, are conservative. The voters in the state of Texas are conservative. They want government to do its number one job, which is to protect our freedoms and our liberties, which don't come from government. But as our founders knew, they are inalienable and are bestowed upon us by our Creator. And the number one job of government is to protect our freedoms and our liberties. But unfortunately, the entity tasked with protecting our freedoms, the Texas government, has become actually the biggest threat to our freedoms and our liberties in many ways. And that's true of governments at all levels. But people have this perception about Texas, that we're this leader on individual liberty and freedom and small government and low taxes and low regulations. But there's the reality, DV. I had the honor, as you know, of serving in a senior position in President Trump's first administration. And when I moved back home to my farmhouse here in Texas and got elected to the Texas legislature, I was excited to lock arms with all these elected Republicans in Texas, because I believe that every elected Republican in Texas was fighting as hard for the freedom and liberty of the next generation as those of us who had worked with President Trump in D.C. And that's just not true. That what's going on down here, and it makes me sad, it also makes me angry, is that we have a lot of people who run for office. They call themselves Republicans. They say they're Republican. They say they're conservatives. They say they're going to fight the Democrats. They say they're going to stand up to the leftists that want to indoctrinate and bankrupt the next generation. But the second they get elected, they go behind closed doors in Austin. I've now seen this. And they vote to put these very same leftist, progressive, radical Democrats, who they told the voters they were going to fight, they vote to put them in charge. And then they collude with them to pass big government socialist bill after big government bill. And that happened all session. Because here's the reality, DB. Everybody who runs for office at any level, you have to make a choice. You can either do one of two things. You cannot avoid the choice, okay? You can either be comfortable in the swamp, or you can stand up and fight for the liberty of the next generation. And I made the choice to do what I promised the voters in Ellis County I would do when they elected me 4 years ago, which is that I would do what was right by them. I would make every decision, never losing sight at the front of my mind. What do the freedom-loving, hardworking, overtaxed men and women of Ellis County in the state of Texas, what would they do if they were in my chair? And they had the choice to push red or green, vote yes or no, grow government or shrink government. And so at every opportunity, I did that. And oftentimes, DV, that meant I was standing alone, because the Austin swamp has been taken over just like DC had. The leftist progressives have infiltrated the Texas government for far too many years. And so I stood up to them on issue after issue, from property taxes to education reform, to trying to put our students first and our teachers first on the issues of education, and to get the crushing burden of property taxes off of millions of Texans and to secure the border and to have election integrity and to get medical freedom back in the state and get rid of COVID vaccine mandates. And I'm very glad to say that even though I stood up to leadership, I don't think there's ever been an elected representative from House District 10 that's ever fought harder or delivered more real results for the people of Ellis County and the state of Texas. So it's been a very long 4 years. It's been a difficult 4 years, but I want to say thank you, not just to you, because DV, you've done a tremendous job opening the eyes of Texas and bringing transparency and a way for voters to communicate with their elected officials. But I want to say also to a thank you, if you're an Ellis County resident, if you live in House District 10, whether you voted for me 4 years ago or not, I want to say thank you, because the encouragement and support that I get from the folks back in Ellis County every time I'm home or just on my emails and texts and phone calls to the office, it has been overwhelming. I hear from Ellis County residents and citizens on a daily basis how thankful they are and how grateful that they got somebody in Austin who's not willing to cave and go along to get along with the corruption, but who's willing to stand up and fight for them and their kids and their grandkids. And without that kind of encouragement, the prayers, the support, I don't think I could keep doing what I've been doing for the last few years. So anyway, that's a long way of saying it was a rough session in a lot of ways, but we're still finding ways to eke out some small victories here and there.
It's one of those things where there were people who were wondering why you weren't signing on to this and why you weren't signing that to that. And you took a toll for that. You take a toll for that. I mean, you're human, and I know you feel, and you see some of these things. And what choice did you have to make there when these
for me it was honestly, DV, there was no choice. I've got a lot of reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing, but I've got four main ones. Their names are Hudson, Tucker, Hayes, and Violet. They're 11 years old and under. And DV, you left California, but I'm going to say something really uncomfortable. Texas we are on our way to becoming California. In some ways, we've already surpassed California. There are already more occupational regulations in Texas than there are in the People's Republic of California. That's not what Texans voted for. Texans in record numbers are losing their homes. They're losing their property because government is exploding. Texans are being taxed out of their homes to fund DEI, to fund transgender indoctrination, to fund lobbyists who come down here to the Capitol and advocate to put adult male sexual predators into the bathrooms of our precious young elementary school girls across the state of Texas. And they're being forced to fund that. Texas taxpayers are being forced to fund that type of activity. They're having their money stolen from them and put in the back pockets of rich elite liberals in Hollywood. This is not the Texas that I grew up in. That is not what the Texans who elected me wanted me. So you asked what the choice was. To me, DV, I didn't have a choice. It was the easiest choice I could have made because I did what I promised I was going to do, fight for freedom and stand up to corruption and stand up to the big government liberals. And I don't care if they call themselves a Democrat or if they call themselves a Republican. If you're voting to steal more money out of the back pockets of hardworking men and women in Ellis County and across Texas, I am not going to be your friend. And if that makes me unpopular in Austin, so be it. I'm fighting for the taxpayers back home, not for the liberal special interests that run this town.
There's one thing that you can never deny, and this time I've gotten to know you and you've been a friend of the show and a friend personally, is that you're going to stand on the principle. You said this is what you're going to do and this is what you're going to do. And there's never been any ambiguity with you. You're going to do what you said you're going to do, whether, it's popular or whether it's not. And people, fall where they lay. But with a place that's covered with Republicans, I mean, Republicans.
And by the way, isn't that what people want? Republican voters, especially in Ellis County. I mean, Texas reelected President Trump with a 14-point landslide, and I don't think they reelected President Trump in a landslide because he's got the best diplomatic skills in the world, or because he's worried about offending somebody, or because he might ruffle some feathers in the swamp. They voted for President Trump in Ellis County and in Texas for the same reason that Ellis County keeps reelecting me, because I'm not afraid to ruffle feathers in the corrupt cesspool of the Austin swamp. If that's what it takes to give my kids, your kids, and your grandkids a fighting chance of enjoying the blessings of prosperity and the fruits of liberty that the generations that came before us fought and paid the ultimate price for. That's why they voted for President Trump. That's why I worked for President Trump. It's why people have been sending me down here to Austin, and I've never lost sight of that.
Yeah. And now there is a big fight, and we talked about it earlier. The Democrats have left the building, and they
we're switching to this, huh?
Yeah, we're switching to this. The Democrats have left.
I need some more coffee then if we're going to talk redistricting here. Let's go.
Yeah, and I know you've been talking about it in different places, but basically the speaker adjourned the House, and the Democrats left. Yep. And you've been video after video saying, hey, he let this happen.
Yep.
Why did he adjourn the House when he knew that these guys were taking off? There's been talk about Beto money funding this and other dark money funding these guys going to Illinois, where they're standing on one of the things where I put a clip of you where you showed Illinois. And you showed a district in Illinois where you said, look, they're going over to the state where they do this, and talking about gerrymandering.
That was on DV. That was on CNN. And because CNN refuses to put the gerrymandered state of Illinois up on their TV, I had my staff print it out and literally by hand color in the map, and I shoved the paper in the camera to force CNN, even though they didn't want to actually show what these gerrymandered Democrat states look like. They didn't like that very much, DV.
So let's start from the beginning. What happened there?
Yeah, so first of all, actually, I'm glad the way you framed it. It was perfect. One of the many reasons I love joining your show, DV, is not just because you're a friend, but because you actually pay attention to the issues. And quite frankly, you've hit on something there that a lot of the national media is missing. I just got done right before you. I was on with Matt Gaetz on his national show talking about this problem with the speaker. And he admitted that a lot of the national media is misframing maybe the biggest part of the story here, because everybody wants to fixate on the Democrats. Oh, these Democrats, and they're thwarting the will of the Republicans by their bold action to leave the state. And yeah, that's a real story. But I think what's at least as big of a story, maybe a bigger story, maybe a bigger scandal, is the harsh reality that Texas Republicans helped the Democrats leave. The leadership of the Texas House, this is why people have to step back 2 seconds and just real quick, let me lay the groundwork of what I'm dealing with in the Texas House. I'm not dealing with real Republicans in the Texas House. I'm certainly not dealing with Trump Republicans, okay? I'm not dealing with Boulder. I'm dealing with Democrats who can't get elected as Democrats, so they run as Republicans. And the Democrat caucus is actually who elects the leadership team in the Texas House. And so what does that mean? That means if you're a conservative, you're not going to get on any real committees. If you're a conservative, your bills are not going to move, okay? Because if you're a conservative and you file conservative bills, well, the leadership is Democrats and liberals. So of course they're not going to let conservative things happen because they're controlled by the Democrat caucus. It's the Democrat caucus that elected our speaker, about 60-something literal Democrats and about 30-something rhinos, teamed up to elect the leadership structure in the Texas House. So the Texas House, and people are shocked to hear this because we have a Republican majority. The Texas House is controlled by the Democrats. The most powerful person in the Texas House is our parliamentarian, who's a Barack Obama White House lawyer. 60% of the Democrat caucus hold leadership positions. That's why government's exploding. That's why taxes are through the roof. That's why liberty is decreasing. And it's why conservatives like myself, they do everything they can to try and destroy me and silence me. Quite frankly, just like the way the national Democrats and establishment Republicans tried to destroy President Trump because they knew he's an existential threat to the liberal status quo. I am an existential threat to the liberal status quo in Austin. And so I called this out. Our Republican speaker last Wednesday had the Democrats here. We had the redistricting map that Republicans in Texas want us to pass, and we had a quorum. And instead of enforcing the quorum, which he easily could have done, after only 7 minutes, in a move of total surprise, he gavelled the body out and released the Democrats to go huddle up with the National Democrat Party leaders who were here in Austin, and they could get a head start of their quorum break. And if you listen to the tape, and I'll have them send it to you. We found it. I screamed as loud as I could, "Objection!" But he ignored my objection and let the Democrats leave to start the quorum break. So the reality is, Republicans helped the Democrats launch this quorum break, and quite frankly, Republicans could end this if they were as bold as the voters of Texas.
Do you think that he did that on purpose?
Absolutely. 100%. I can prove it. I can prove it. The leader of the House Democrat caucus, Gene Wu, this is how corrupt this is, okay? Real conservatives like myself, we don't get put on many committees. Our bills don't move, but guess who gets put on great committees? Guess whose bills move? the most radical socialist progressive Democrats the state of Texas has. Namely, one Gene Wu is the chairman of the House Democrat Caucus. The first morning of this special session, he held a press conference where he said, I will do anything, our caucus will do anything we need to thwart President Trump, to thwart President Republicans, and we will break quorum to do it. What happened 30 minutes later? Our so-called Republican speaker appointed him to the redistricting committee and put him in charge of the redistricting efforts. These Democrats elected our Republican speaker. Our Republican speaker works for and does the bidding of the Democrats. So I do not care what the political cost is to me. I am never going to stop fighting for the men and women who sent me down here to Austin. And that includes standing up and, if at times, standing alone against the liberal, socialist, corrupt, Marxist, progressive leadership of the so-called Republican dominated Texas House. So yeah, the so-called Republican assisted the Democrats in the quorum break. And I can also prove it to you too, because look at what he's done since then. Absolutely nothing. He hasn't stripped them of their committee assignments. He hasn't taken their chairmanships away. He hasn't even taken their parking spots from them. So no, this is all smoke and mirrors. It's bad political theater. That's all that's happening right now.
There's been talk about arrests and there was warrants issued or something like that. Is that a thing, or is that just posturing?
Well, it is a real thing that actually every one of these Democrats voted for in our House rules. There's something called a call of the House, which we should have done last Wednesday when the Democrats were here, because as long as they're within the borders of the state of Texas, there is no question as to whether or not we have the authority to arrest, detain, and forcibly bring back to the chamber and lock the doors and make them do what the Constitution of the state of Texas requires of them, which is namely do their job. And look, if they don't like the maps, go to the microphones and scream and yell and explain why we shouldn't do this. And let those of us who support the maps go to the microphones and let's have a debate. Let's talk about it, but let's do our job. But yes, he had all of the authority to force the Democrats to say and to arrest them. But instead of doing that, he released them into the loving arms and the warm embrace of the Democrat leadership of the U.S. Congress, who helped them flee the state of Texas. And now it's a lot harder. But yeah, I mean, look, our governor promised 1 week ago today that if they didn't show up last Monday at 3, their seats would be vacated. But unfortunately, we've seen not enough action since then.
Are we doing Biden red lines instead of Trump red lines here?
You talking about the redistricting?
No, the red lines. If you don't come back Monday, we're gonna. They're doing the Biden.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, look, DB, the leadership of the state of Texas right now, they're embarrassing themselves. Yeah. It would be far better off if they just stood up there and said, we're not going to do anything and we're going to wait till they come home. That would actually be better. I mean, like, I would oppose that. That's insane. Like, that's also its own way of embarrassing. But like, that's better than like empty promise after hollow threat, after just more words and more strongly worded press statements. You know, it's a bunch of sound and fury signifying nothing. Like that's the worst of all worlds, because you're projecting weakness. And let me tell you something, DV. I know the voters in Ellis County. I know the voters in Texas. I worked for President Trump. Texas voters want their government to be bold. They want their government to be strong in the defense of protecting liberty. And what's at stake here, DB? I can't overstate this. We're talking about the future of our country. The Texas redistricting may well decide who controls the United States Congress in next year's midterms, and whether or not the last 2 years of President Trump's term are full of good, bold Republican policies and proposals that will make our country great and strong, or if it's going to be full of nothing more than impeachments and sham investigation to derail the Trump agenda. And that's why I'm doing absolutely everything I can. I don't care who in Austin it upsets to make sure that President Trump has got a full term and that the Republican agenda is not derailed in Congress next year.
Devil's advocate, and then the last question will be, where do we go from here? But
yeah,
did we have to have this fight right now? Did we have to do this redistricting now?
Great question, and yeah, I think we have to do this, and for lots of reasons. I mean, number one. So let's see if I can get how many of these I can get in here. Number one. My Democrat colleagues, they are total dishonest hypocrites. They have no problem whatsoever with states redrawing their maps for partisan political advantage. And how do I know this? Because every Democrat state in the country has been doing this for the past 10 years. And I'll give you just 2 examples. A lot of my colleagues are hanging out in Illinois. Illinois is the most gerrymandered state in the country. Let me tell you how shocking this is, okay? Voters in Illinois are 45% Republican. But they have gerrymandered their map to where only 15% of the congressional seats go to Republicans. In California,
Wow.
in California, same thing. 42% of the vote are Republican, only 17%. 9 out of the 52 seats go to Republicans. So state after state after state on the Democrat side has been doing this for decades. So number one, it's not like Texas is doing anything unique and novel. Democrats don't really have a problem with redistricting for partisan political purposes. They're just mad that a Republican state is finally doing something about it. Okay, so number two, and I'll try to make these as quick as I can. We've had a lot of changes in the last 5 years. But first of all, I need to make this point. This is constitutional. The Constitution of the United States absolutely allows this. In fact, they say you must redraw your maps at least every 10 years. And then the Constitution of the state of Texas allows us to do this. Well, 5 years ago when we had the census done, we got a few things since then, problems. Number one, the Census Bureau has admitted that they undercounted Texas's population, I think by over 500,000 people. So the census had some bad data. Number two, vote people have been flooding into Texas since then. We've had literally millions of people flood into our state since these maps were drawn in 2021. These people need to be represented too. Number three or four, whatever I'm on now. I think number four. We have had massive changes in the voting trends in this state, okay, and particularly with Hispanic voters down in the southern parts of the state, down near the Rio Grande Valley. These voters are fleeing the failed liberal policies of the Democrat Party in droves. So we absolutely need a map that more accurately reflects the will of the voters of the state of Texas. And I'm not going to be bashful. I'm not going to be shy in advocating for what the voters of the state of Texas want us to do. We need to get this done. And quite frankly, I think we should have done this already and had this in the rearview mirror. We should have done this in the regular session and had it behind us already.
Brian, I know we ran out of time, but I do appreciate you coming on from all the shows you've been on and all the places that you gave me time. I really do appreciate it. But I'm going to give you the last word to talk to your constituents. I want to talk to you somewhere around November, December, hopefully, and we'll talk about another issue I can't talk about.
We can do it before then because it is it's the honor of my lifetime.
I'd like to see you break news on this show, you know. So
I'm always breaking news somewhere on something, so we'll do that. I mean, look. So just talking again to the folks back in Ellis County, guys, it's the honor of my life to be your voice for freedom, your fighter for liberty in the great state, the greatest state in the greatest country that has ever lived. And like I told you when I ran, I sort of had, if I could summarize what I'm trying to do in just sort of one sentence here, I want government to be as irrelevant to your lives as possible, so that we can be as free as God meant for us to be. But the state of Texas for far too many years has been on the wrong track. And even though you, the voters, voted for bold conservative Republican leadership, for far too long, your taxes have been too high, your regulations have been too high, and your money, your hard-earned tax dollars have been weaponized against you, against your children, and your values by making you fund things that I know you don't believe in, like DEI, like transgender indoctrination in our schools, like liberal Hollywood. And I'm committed to doing everything I can to make Texas, the Texas that everybody outside of Texas thinks that we are. I want Texas to be the #1 state in America for liberty. We're not. We got to go about changing that, and it's my honor to fight for that every single day. And I'm committed to making sure that Ellis County always has a representative who puts their freedoms and their liberties and their children and their grandchildren #1 in their mind. And it's been my honor to do that for the last 4 years.
Thank you, Brian, for coming on. Can you stick around real quick?